Okay. So again, hello everyone, thank you for joining. What you can expect from this session is we're going to talk about the lack of representation from women and ethnic minority groups in the transport sector. We want to raise awareness about this issue, but also kind of discuss what all these transport organisations can do to help support this. So we're going to talk about some of the programmes and development opportunities that are already in place to encourage more representation, and why they haven't had an immediate effect. So the panel will discuss their own experiences with working in transport and their own ideas to help the transport sector recruit, retain, and develop women and people from ethnic minority groups. If you'd like to ask a question, please can you write it in the chat and I will do my best to pick them all up. So I will let my panelists introduce themselves. So if you could say who you are and where you work, and I will start with Inky.
Hi everyone. My name is Nkiruka Nzekwu. Everyone calls me Inky, and I work with Transport for London. I work in project controls, and I'm also the vice chair for the Women's Colleague Network Group for TfL.
Thank you. And Jo?
Hi everyone, I'm Jo Field. I'm the president of Women in Transport, which is a not-for-profit organisation and professional network that is empowering women in the transport industry to maximise their potential. We are UK-wide. We're in 8 regions across the UK, including London. And we offer things like networking, professional development opportunities, mentoring programmes, leadership programmes. We are run largely by volunteers. Actually, we have over 100 volunteers, of which I am one. I do the president's role in addition to my day job. And yeah, what else to say? We're open to everyone. I think that's very important to say. Although we're trying to empower women, it's about everyone working together to achieve a diverse transport workforce.
Thank you. And Sarah?
Yeah, hi, morning everybody. Sarah Valentine. I'm Head of Analysis and Appraisal with Transport for the South East. Prior to that, though, I've got a very long background in local government, particularly in the highways field, having been involved in a number of major and more minor projects over the last 30 odd years. So, yeah.
Thank you. And lastly, Katie.
Hello, I'm Katie Lamb. I'm lead transport planner at Transport for the South East. Been at TfSE for coming up on 2 years now. Prior to that, working in consultancy, mainly focused on active travel, but have done other things like development planning, etc.
Thank you very much. So historically, transport has been a very male-dominated profession, and over the years, it has slowly increased in representation from women, which is due to lots of different factors, like, you know, the non-profit groups, you know, targeting schools, etc., etc. So how is it that you all ended up working in transport? Was it something specific that sparked your interest? I'm going to go with Inky first again.
Okay, thank you for that question. So I actually fell into transport. I came into the UK almost over 20 years ago. I've been working with TfL for a little over 18 and a half years. When I came in, I was a qualified barrister and solicitor. So when I came into the UK, I wanted to do my conversion exams. So I was temping just to get, make enough money to do my exams and all that. And here we are, how many years down the line? A 2 weeks temp became what it is now. And so that's how I actually fell into transport. And I came in, I loved it. Obviously, I'm still there. So, I must like it. So, yeah, that's how I came into work in a transport industry. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'll go on to Jo next.
Thank you. Similar to Enki, actually, I fell into transport by accident. So I was based in Scotland originally, so started my career there. And I was working in charity sector roles, doing public affairs for the charity sector. And I moved to London and then went to a charity role in London as well. But I knew that I didn't want to stay in the charity sector forever. And I mean, in those days, I don't know if it's changed now, but like lots of small charities, when I was much earlier in my career, like they didn't have very good maternity pay. And I was thinking about having a family, and so wanted to look for something that would be a bit more secure in terms of maternity pay. And I stumbled across Transport for London and applied for a role in their public affairs team. And yeah, like I got that job, and I hadn't considered transport before, other than the fact that I lived in London. I used the London transport network, and you know, it obviously was something that touched my life. But yes, it was quite by accident. And yeah, I love TfL. I love the fact that London transport impacts on so many people's lives. And you know, you working there, you get to work on amazing big projects, and you know, it's sort of the intersection of transport and politics. So yeah, I spent nearly 10 years at TfL. I now in a consultancy that specializes in transport and public affairs. So yeah, still very much in the sector. Like I loved it so much, I've never wanted to leave. But yes, a complete accident how I ended up there.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, dear. I think I possibly was then a little bit different. In that at school and as a child, I was always interested, probably more in science and maths than I was in some of the arts. And certainly as a child, I spent far longer playing with Lego than I did playing with dolls. And I can distinctly remember me and my dad building entire Lego towns and roads and bridges across the living room floor. So I think I've always had an interest in sort of more engineering side of things, and that was my route in. I actually came to the county council as a work experience for a week. And I think that gave me a really good insight into some of the possibilities. And then when I had finished my A-levels, there was actually an opportunity to work at the county council, but on a training scheme where I went and did civil engineering at uni alongside working as well. And in that time, they also had a very good training scheme where you worked in different parts of the department. So you got to see all sort of aspects of highways. It was highways and transportation department then, from planning to the engineering side to the maintenance side. And that sort of really, you know, sparked my interest, and must have held my interest, because 34 years later I'm still in transport. So yeah, that was my routine, probably a little bit more direct rather than falling into it, but yeah, stemmed from a greater interest in sort of maths and science for me.
Thank you. Katie.
Yeah, I think I kind of go back to the falling into it. I originally thought I was going to be a journalist. Realized I'm far too opinionated for that, so ended up in an elective course on planning more generally, and being taught, kind of my eyes opened of how our built environment affects what we choose to do and how we feel. I just really resonated with that, and then when I came to the UK, just got a work placement with a transport consultancy. So that was kind of my first introduction into the transport side of planning. And yeah, just haven't looked back. I don't know if anyone else is familiar with the Streets Ahead podcast. Interviewed Louise Haigh, the transport minister, a little while back, and she kind of had the same sort of feeling of getting into it and realizing it's possibly the only department that touches everyone's lives every single day. So just really fortunate. I feel really fortunate to be in a career such as that.
Thank you. So it's really interesting that three of you have fallen into transport rather than planned it from being young. So this question might differ for Sarah compared to the others. But as a child or a young adult compared to now, how has your perception of the transport sector changed? So, you know, was it an option as a child, sort of thing? Sorry, Katie.
Well, I think it's a little bit different coming from the States, because I think the planning kind of system is a lot more visible and integrated here. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was anything that I even knew was in the realm of possibilities. Of course, I had heard of architects, because you have to build buildings, but I hadn't heard of necessarily engineers. Just took for granted that the roads would be there. And yeah, it really wasn't until I well, that lecturer who introduced me to the built environment was from the UK. So in a way, I wouldn't know that transport planning existed if I hadn't had a sort of relationship with this country. So and similarly to Sarah, I loved Legos, I love building, but I guess there was nothing really pushing me into the direction of realizing that into adulthood. So yeah, that's really my best answer for that.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. And Joe?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember back. So I mean, transport. So I grew up in Scotland in a very rural area. So like we only had like one bus an hour, and I guess people were very reliant on cars. And so I didn't think too much about transport and the planning and everything that went into it. And I also think at school, like I'm trying to think, was it the kind of thing that was spoken about to young people as a career option? I don't know if it was, but I also think I missed out on a lot of those career discussions because I left school when I was 16. So I think a lot of that was happening after I had left. So yeah, it definitely wasn't presented as a career option to me, but I think probably lots of things weren't presented as career options to me.
Thank you very much. And Inky?
Yeah, for me, I grew up in Africa, Nigeria specifically, and it's a place where if you get an education back in the day, you either had to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer, or one of those things, right? And engineering to me was, a lot of road building, a lot of building, massive structures. So coming into the UK and working for TfL was quite an eye opener for me because it was transport, and transport as I thought it was just transport, the stations and all that. But it was shocking to see that there was everything within that transport sector. Amazing, the building stuff, uh, projects, all sorts. So it was a culture shock and it was eye opening and I loved it, So I never thought my background is in law, so it was not something. I'm not a STEM person. When you call figures, my brain I just have brain fog. So definitely that wasn't an option for me, But coming into a TfL, seeing that you can be anything. You can be a nurse and work in TfL. You can be a doctor and work in TfL. You can be anything and work in TfL. Amazing, So that's where my experience and it was eye-opening for me to see that lots of things are involved in the transport sector.
Thank you. And Sarah?
Yeah, I think a little bit like Inky, really. I think, given my engineering background as well, my initial perception in my younger years was it was around big schemes and road building and engineering and all these kind of things. And I think as I've progressed through my career and gained more experience and sort of been exposed to a much wider area of transport, it's more about the impact it has on people's lives. We're not just building things for the sake of building things, although it's as an engineer I do like building things. It's about why are we doing it and what difference is it making to people's lives, and that for me is a sort of, I think, one of the real draws for a career in transport is that it does, as others have said, really impact on everyday lives for so many people. Almost all of the population will have some need for the transport network every day of their lives. Even if you stay at home, you're probably going to have a delivery of some sort, or the bin men are going to come and collect your rubbish. So it needs transport, and it does impacts on everybody's lives, and that opportunity to make a difference, I think, is so crucial.
Thank you. So talking about making a difference, can you tell me a bit about something that you have achieved as a woman working in transport and what factors helped you achieve it? So Sarah, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, unsurprisingly, it's I have been involved in some very, very big highway schemes, which is really pleasing to see, because of the difference it does make. But also some of the smaller work that you do, it's not just building a big new dual carriageway or new railway, but some of the active travel and simple pedestrian crossings that really make a difference to people's lives. So I think that's again, for me, that's the bit that really attracts me to it and keeps me in it. Is that opportunity to see the difference that you make.
Thank you very much. Inky?
If you don't mind, can you ask that question again?
Absolutely. Can you tell me a bit about something you've achieved as a woman in transport and the factors that helped you achieve it?
Okay, so working as long as I have in Transport for London, I've been opportune to work on major projects and see it, serve people, like the Victoria Station upgrade, the Northern Line extension. I've seen it from nothing, and then it is something, and the impact of it. But specifically for me in the transport sector, it's people. It's the people that have done amazing things, have helped me, and it's my achievement is the people as well. That's why I decided to go for the role, and was successful in for the Women's Colleague Network Group. It's about changing cultures, changing narratives, making things better than we met it. So I would say I've had many achievements and I'm still working on on much more. It doesn't end. It doesn't end until, until you're out of the scene. But, people have helped me achieve anything and everything that I've been able to achieve. And so I love people and I try to give back in that way. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Joe?
So yeah, I guess I'll use a women in transport example, but just to give you a bit of context. So my day job is public affairs and stakeholder engagement, and I specialize in building advocacy for transport. And that's hugely important, particularly for big schemes like Crossrail and HS2 and those kind of schemes that really do need stakeholder support to help them to go ahead. So I guess you could say I specialize in relationships and building support for transport. And actually, what I'm most proud of is one of the things I've done since joining the board of Women in Transport, that was back in 2015. And at that point, we had a really great events program, but we definitely hadn't cracked the political engagement. So I was able to bring the expertise from my day job and work with parliamentarians to build cross-party support for the issue of women's underrepresentation in the transport sector. So what that looked like was I helped parliamentarians to start the all-party parliamentary group for women in transport. And that has just helped to shine political focus on the gender diversity issue. And that's been going since 2016. You have to keep reforming it in successive parliaments. So we're just in the process of reforming it now in the new parliament since we had the general election back in July. But yeah, as part of that, I've also had to get support from all the Secretary of States that we've had, the various Secretary of States of Transport and transport ministers. So I have managed to do that, to get that cross-party support and that government support, which just really helps to make gender diversity, to make sure it stays on the agenda and stays high on the agenda of politicians.
Thank you very much. And Katie?
Yeah, I think I go back to something that Nki said about people, and that being really something that I'm most proud of. I've had a few people in my life describe what I do as transport matchmaking, because of the kind of collaboration and getting people to work together across organizations or sectors. That's really where I get the most satisfaction. Not necessarily me doing a particular thing, but putting people putting people together that then go off and do great things. So I would say that's where I've kind of found the most satisfaction in working in transport, and not a hard truth, but I find that women have that kind of people focused, kind of looking at things in different directions and kind of thinking about the hearts and minds of people, and being able to build those coalitions because of that.
Brilliant, thank you all. And so have there been any challenges working in a male-dominated sector? I'm going to start with Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, as you'd imagine, over the last 35 years, things have fortunately changed an awful lot. But in the earlier days of my career, it really wasn't uncommon that I was the only woman, either in the team or in the office, particularly on construction sites. I remember, starting work on a construction site and the men being quite put out that they needed to clear out everything from the ladies' toilet because they'd be using it as a storeroom. And did I really need to use that toilet, or could I not just use theirs? Thankfully, we're not in that sort of situation. Things again like PPE. I've got size 3 feet, so they would say, well, we can get safety boots in a size 6. Well, they do. Well, not really, no. So again, things have moved on, thankfully, in these ways. And I was very fortunate recently to go and visit one of the big sites up on the M25 that National Highways are doing, and so pleased to see far more women represented in the site office. Absolutely, facilities for everybody, and that's obviously a massive step forward. So I think that is really good, but there's still a long way to go. I don't think we should rest our laurels just because there's a ladies' toilet on a construction site. There is an awful lot more to do, and it needs to spread through the whole organisation to make sure there are opportunities, and make sure that we can make those valuable contributions that we do. I think one thing that's really changed over the course of my career, and obviously accelerated through the pandemic, was the ability to work flexibly. I think, whether we like it or not, there is still, a vast amount of childcare or other caring responsibilities that the women do carry out in society. And I think the ability to have flexible working and it not to be seen as something weird or different, but just part of, everybody works flexibly, that helps massively. Just breaking down some of those barriers to anybody being able to, be involved in the industry.
Thank you. Joe.
Sorry, I couldn't get off mute there. Can you remind me of the question, please?
Yep, it is. Has there been any challenges working in a male-dominated sector?
Yes, definitely. Although what I would say is that, and this might seem quite strange because I started my transport career at Transport for London, and so I was in the public affairs team. So, there was a sort of wider comms team and press office, and you do tend to get a better gender split in comms roles. So initially I didn't notice that I was working in this hugely male dominated environment. And it was only as I got more senior and, similarly to you, Sarah, it would be like, oh, I'm sometimes the only woman in the room. And it actually was when I had my children as well that I then realized, oh, it's actually quite hard when you come back to work after maternity leave. And I was looking for, well, who are the senior women, who are my peers and, role models and people that I can turn to for support. And that's when I realized, there's really not enough senior women in this industry. And I guess that's when I wanted to do something about it. So that's why I reached out and got involved in Women in Transport. And actually, we hear lots of anecdotal things from our members about, the challenges that they have faced. We've done research on it as well to find out what some of the issues are. And although I do think it has got better over the years, like I've been in transport for nearly 20 years now, and there's definitely improvements, as you've said, Sarah. But, some research that we did in Women in Transport just a couple of years ago, that found the majority of respondents said that transport has a macho culture, and also people perceived it as having an image problem. So perhaps it doesn't appeal to women, it doesn't appeal to young people. So there's definitely some issues that we still need to tackle.
Thank you very much. Inky.
Like Sarah and Joe have said, there are definitely challenges working in a male-dominated environment. And looking back, there have been changes, positive changes, but not enough. We have a long way to go. Now, having worked in projects most of my time in TfL, it's a lot of males sitting around the room, and you find out that you do have women in the room, but it's very rare. And then there are the note takers, the the note takers and things like that. And then you might have a woman around the table who will say something. We all know this, and contribute to the meeting, and it's as if she said nothing, and somebody somewhere, a male, will say something, and it's like, oh yeah, great idea. And you're thinking, was it not English I spoke? Did you not hear me? So this is something that is common. It's getting rarer and rarer. Why? Because like in TFL where I work, there's that encouragement to call things out. If the person that's affected does not say anything, you in the room be a good ally and say, actually, that was what XYZ said. And try and don't keep quiet, try and support. So those changes, those empowerment, I can see the difference from way back and now. The companies are encouraging their employees to speak up. The culture should change, and things like that. So yeah, challenges, yes, but we're I'm hopeful. I'm also a member of the Women in Transport. You can't they're doing amazing stuff. Our CNGs are doing amazing stuff just to try and change the culture, to make the challenges as less as possible. Make it a better place for everyone, not just women, everyone to work in. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Katie.
Yeah, just to build on Inky's point around kind of speaking up and being heard in spaces, especially if you're the only one or one of few, I've found the most helpful thing, rather than me kind of, I guess, just bucking up and speaking over anybody else, is having those allies, those male allies in the room, make space for you. So whether that's just opening the door saying, oh, Katie, you were telling me about XYZ the other day, or Katie, did you have anything else to add? Just that tiny bit then gives me that confidence to speak up. And it's such a small thing, but it can make the difference between whether or not I speak up that day. So there's really subtle things like that as well, that we need to work on.
Thank you so much. So what programs, if any, where you work, it could be development schemes, it could be mentoring, it could be peer support groups, have you got access to? Have you got access to any? If you don't, would you like access to them? So I'm going to start with Inky.
Okay, thank you. So, as you know, TfL is a big organization. We're about 30,000 strong, and there's been a lot of things that have been rolled out over the years, and one of such things, engagement. And that's why the colleague network group, the colleague network group in TfL is very important. Senior leadership understand and recognize that it is necessary to have such things in place to create a safe space where colleagues can come together and talk about things, like-minded people, or even different people. You learn, you just come together, in a safe environment. So that's there. Of course, equality policy is something that TfL is really into, making sure that the discrimination policies are looked at, and it's just trying to make it not lip service, as it's not make it a tick box exercise, but empower people to to say it's everyone's responsibility to make that change happen. It's not it doesn't fall only on one person. It's a collective thing. The more you get involved, the more your voice is heard, the more changes come about. Apart from that, we have listening sessions. Listening sessions are held by the senior leadership, and everyone, come and share your thoughts. Let people learn from you. You don't have to contribute if you don't feel comfortable contributing, but you can listen, you can learn. You can it's just empowering people. That's in a nutshell. The more people are empowered, the more there's change, the more they can speak up if something is not working, you know. So yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And Joe?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Women in Transport mentoring program, because I recognize, you know, lots of organizations like TfL have great mentoring programs, but, you know, not every organization has one. And sometimes actually people go on mentoring programs because ultimately they're trying to find out, well, what is my next career move? You know, they're looking to move to another job outside their organization. So sometimes you might want to go on an external mentoring program. And what we've developed at Women in Transport is a mentoring program called Advance, which has been running since 2017. We've just opened applications actually for this year. I think it's open to the 20th of October. So I guess a small plug, if anyone wants to apply as a mentee or a mentor, you do need to be a member of Women in Transport in order to join, because it's, you know, it's one of the benefits that we offer to our members. But yeah, it's open to female members, and we match them with a mentee who is external to their organization. And basically it's giving them structured support, 6 mentoring sessions, 1-hour mentoring sessions from January to September. It can be virtual or it can be in person. And the mentees and the mentors get proper training, and we have a mentor agreement and everything like that. So, you know, it's structured and it's professional development support. You know, we've had loads of amazing feedback from everyone who's gone through the program over the last few years. So yeah, it's definitely making a difference.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Sarah and Katie together as TfSE.
Thanks, Tia. I mean, again, TfSE, we are a small organisation ourselves, and we're also hosted by East Sussex County Council. So in terms of all the, you know, various opportunities for mentoring and you know, qualities policies that have been mentioned by Joe and Inky, yeah, we have that through the county council. But I think for me, I would go back to what Katie said in the previous question. It's so much more than that. You can have the best policies in the world, but it's the day-to-day actions that actually make the difference and allow everyone to thrive in a working environment. And that empowering and having, you know, male colleagues as allies, I think is so important. And I feel very, you know, lucky throughout my career to have had a number of really good male managers and colleagues who've really helped and provided those opportunities. They've encouraged me to go for, you know, new roles when they've come about. They've provided me with opportunities to grow and develop. I'd like to say I've equally had a number of managers who are probably at the opposite end of the spectrum, but we'll try not to talk about them. But it is those day-to-day you know, actions and attitudes that make such a difference. And just the example that always sticks out to me, and if the person involved ever listens to this, he will know it is him. But I was the project manager for a new road scheme, and we had a meeting with external developers, and the external developer turned up and immediately made the assumption that my manager was the project manager and I was there to take notes. And he was almost, you know, fell off his chair when I was introduced. And my manager at the time just stood up at that point and said, would anybody like a tea or coffee? And he exited the room and went to get everybody tea and coffee, leaving me then to manage the meeting. And in that small action just empowered me so much to, you know, take control of that meeting and really sort of, you know, get to it. And yeah, that was just such a good supportive move. Really simple. It doesn't take any training courses, it doesn't take any mentoring. It's those day-to-day actions. And I think, you know, that's what we need to encourage workplaces where everybody supports everybody. And it's, you know, it's not just women, it's not just, you know, who need that support, other colleagues as well, you know, but have those workplaces where everybody is supported to play their part and given the opportunity to do their bit. I think that's, for me, makes the biggest difference.
Perfect. Anything you'd like to add, Katie?
Yeah, I think this kind of pulls together what others have said. That the thing I found most useful in my current role, but also previous roles as well, are those kind of they might be working groups, but there's also support groups. So for instance, at East Sussex, we've got the kind of Yammer chats. So there are ways that you can find people with a kind of a similar interest or a similar sort of angle that they're coming from, so that you don't feel so alone. But then also, if it's more of a working group side of thing, that's really important as well, because that's a way in which you can show up and kind of help shape future decisions. So always recommend getting involved with any kind of extracurricular groups.
Thank you so much. Joe, I have two questions for you. One, what has been done within Women in Transport, aside from the mentoring, that has had a really positive effect? And how would someone get involved?
So two things. There's lots of things actually I could mention. But yeah, I think two things that have been really important. So in addition to the mentoring scheme Advance, we also started a few years ago, 2021, I think it was, a leadership program called Lead. And that is to support women who are either just getting their first leadership role or they want to get their first leadership role. And again, that's a professional training program. It's been designed especially for women in transport. So it's focused on the sector and skills you need to build. It's delivered entirely virtual. Like some women have been through it while they're on maternity leave and things like that, like doing it virtually. And yeah, it's produced really fantastic results. Anecdotally, I don't think we've got the exact stats, but yeah, loads of women that have been through the program have either got a promotion or they've got a new job or a new project that has actually enabled them to use the skills that they've developed on the program. So yeah, that's been really, really good. That's made a real difference. And the other thing is our intersectionality program, and the research I mentioned where it showed that women perceived the transport sector as macho and perhaps having a bit of an image problem. In that same study, we asked women about, barriers to progressing their careers, and lots of women said they had experienced barriers to progressing their careers. But in particular, women from ethnic minority communities said that they had experienced different and specific barriers. So as a result of that, we launched an intersectionality program, and that's led by Shireen Ali Khan, who is our intersectionality director. And that has been going from strength to strength over the past couple of years, focusing on unpicking the relationship between power and privilege, and what do we need to do to make the transport sector more ethnically diverse and get women into leadership positions, women from ethnic minority communities. So there's a number of things going on under that work stream, but probably one to take a look at if you haven't seen it is the podcast. So yeah, those are two things that I think are really helping to make a difference.
And how can someone get involved?
Oh yes, how can they get involved? Well, the key thing, the podcast, anybody can download that on the usual channels and listen, and I'd encourage you to do so. But the key thing to get involved is to join Women in Transport, because then you will have access to the leadership program, the intersectionality program. All the information is on our website, which is www.womenintransport.com. But yeah, I definitely encourage you to take a look if you haven't come across us before.
Thank you very much. And just to mention as well that TfSE have a podcast, and we did a Women in Transport one, which had Katie, Sarah, and Katie Stewart on it. So if you'd like to listen to that, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the TfSE website. Okay, so what sort of information development opportunities would you like to see put forward if they weren't already put forward? So it doesn't even have to be something new. It could be something that needs to be improved upon. Joe.
So I think, for me, a key piece of the puzzle is about engaging young people and getting schools engagement cracked. And I know there's like loads of good work going on across the industry, people going out to do schools outreach and, particular projects when they're in communities going out and doing schools outreach. But what I think is, because it's different individual organizations or individual industry bodies, it's all quite different, it's not really joined up. And I would like to see some sort of overarching coordination, I guess, to help join that up. So maybe it's something that government needs to help with, but yeah, I feel like the missing piece of the puzzle is how are we engaging young people, perhaps asking young people how they want to be engaged, and then government and industry working together to make that happen.
Perfect, thank you. And Inky?
Do you mind? Do you mind with
No,
the
it's
first
okay.
question?
That's okay. So what information or development opportunities would you like to see put forward? It doesn't have to be anything new. It could be something that you think needs improving on. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, first of all, big shout out to lead program. I'm currently on it. Whoop whoop. So one of the things I'll talk about something that affects me personally. There are lots of changes to be made. I'm a woman, and when we talk about intersectionality, I'm also an ethnic minority woman. So it's a fight within a fight. We're fighting every day for women, and then there's another layer. So one of the things that I would really love, which could be a whole lot better in my organization, is the intersectionality bit. Funny enough, I don't know much about the intersectionality program in women in transport, and it's something I'm going to go away and look more into, but that is missing because with all the programs that TfL has put forward, it's still a problem for ethnic minority, and then we talk about a glass ceiling for women, for ethnic minority, I believe there's a cement ceiling. So when you can break through the glass ceiling, there's another level. There's another level that, people like me have to struggle. So it's like going back to the drawing board. There needs to be more work to understand why this is not happening. That for me is a big problem. We like to say something in TfL, that we need to look like the city that we serve, and it needs to happen everywhere at every layer. It's not okay. We have so many ethnic minority people, women, and then they're the lower rung, and that's it. Thus far, no more. No, we need to really look at issues, look at it, square on, and think of, really positive and practical ways to, make this shift happen. So for me, that's one program that is not in existence that we need to look into, to make things much better. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Katie?
I think something that would be really useful, not just for women, but also disabilities, for instance, is managerial training. So some, like Sarah alluded to earlier, some managers are great, others not so much. So trying to kind of even that out a bit through development, and some might just not have the information or might not be confident to go into those spaces and learn further. But just kind of making that a baseline at more places where when you're moving into those positions where you're going to be potentially line managing diverse groups, to have that knowledge and background is a good starting point. Helps
Thank you
shift
very
the
much.
culture.
Yeah, absolutely. Sarah?
Yeah, I don't think there's an awful lot to add to what everyone else has said, but for me, it's certainly around showcasing the opportunities that are within transport. If you look at everybody's background on the call here today, we've all come at it from a very, very different angle, and I think it's people don't necessarily think about transport, and there's a whole range of different careers that you can have, and I think the more that we can showcase what opportunities are available, and the whole importance, coming back to what Ingy said earlier, of having women and any other sort of minority groups represented at all levels. It's not just the technical levels or the managerial levels, it's the decision making levels as well, and you need to have that representation throughout in order to really get a transport system that is going to work for everybody. So I think, yeah, that's so important. But for me, it's all about visibility, and the more we can get out there, the more we can tell people what the opportunities are, how they can get involved, why it's so important they get involved. I think, you know, that will stand us in good stead for trying to make change.
Oh, can you hear me? Oh. Sorry, my microphone went very wrong then. Okay, thank you all for that. We have a question from Sarah Taylor. So it says, we are looking for a method of having transport between our trusts, NHS, and looked at how we can make this a diverse opportunity, but can't seem to find an option for this, and including apprenticeships. So I'm going to pass that on to the panel. We'll start with Jo.
So, sorry, I'm just looking. I'm not sure I understand the question actually. So, is it like finding an option for apprentice roles in the transport planning between trusts? Is that what is meant?
Yeah, I think that is what is meant.
Okay, so I mean, something we do at Women in Transport, actually, a lot of organisations come to us asking for help in advertising roles because they recognise that they don't have, you know, if it's when they've advertised the jobs before, they haven't had a diverse range of applicants, or they haven't had enough women. So sometimes organisations will come to us and ask for help in advertising vacancies. So, you know, we can help with that for sure. In terms of apprentices, yeah, if it's an apprentice vacancy, we can help to advertise that too. But I think probably also going back to my last point about young people and needing to find better ways to reach out to schools and make them aware of the opportunities that are available, and ask young people how they want to be engaged.
Thank you. Has anyone else got any thoughts on this?
I agree with what
Yes,
Jo. I agree with what Jo has said. Yes, it's about engaging the young people and asking them how they would like to be engaged, and you know, telling them more about what the transporting sector is all about. You know, engineering do a good job. As the STEM, everyone knows STEM goes into the schools and tries to get them, but that needs to be replicated across the board, you know, to let them know that you can also come into the transport sector and, you know, project controls. You don't need science to do that, you know, so it's just getting out there more and, you know, sharing.
Perfect. Thank you. So I have one last question for you all. And it's, what do you think we should try to do to encourage a younger and more diverse group of women to join the transport sector? Inky.
Presentation matters, you know, when they see people like them in certain positions, they'll come in. They're not seeing it, you know. So if you sometimes you can't imagine what you don't see, you know, and you don't know what you don't know, right? So there needs to be more representation in sectors to draw the kind of people that they want in, you know. They need to see it. Yeah, that's all I'll say.
Thank you. Katie.
Yeah, this is something that's been touched on a couple times already around transport being such a diverse field as well, that it's not one thing. And I'm coming up on 10 years in the sector, and I still find new sort of ways in which people are involved in the transport sector that I wouldn't traditionally think are the case. So I think really broadening what that looks like. It's not just fixing potholes or building roads or necessarily building cycle lanes. It's all sorts. It's communications, as Jo's pointed out. It's if you're just interested in project managing side of things, or if you do want to actually break the ground and be on site, it looks like so many different things. And I think that's also very exciting being in the sector, because if I get bored at some point, there's something else I could do, but not leave the sector per se.
Thank you very much. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, just echoing others' points, really, it is that visibility, and that visibility of the range of opportunities that are within the sector, the visibility that there are women, and at those positions that you can see where you can get to. And I think, as an industry, we have a responsibility, come back to my point earlier about just showcasing what we do and really, making it known what the opportunities are and saying why it's so important. Over half the population are women, and they travel just as much as the slightly less than half men do. So it's so important, but we need to constantly get that message out there, constantly show that there are opportunities that could appeal to a whole range of different careers, but in the transport sector.
Thank you very much. And lastly, Jo.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have loads to add, because totally echo and support what others have said about, letting people see what they can be and the range of opportunities and all that. But there's definitely something about going to young people and asking them and inspiring them, because, sometimes as a sector, we assume we know what would attract young people, but actually we need to go and ask them. And although I mentioned I worked in the charity sector before transport, it was the charity youth sector that I worked in. And a big part of what we did was about engaging young people to ask them what they think. So yeah, I guess that's what I would add, going out and inspiring young people and finding out what would make them want to work in transport.
Brilliant, thank you. So by the looks of it, there are no more questions in the chat forum. So I am going to say thank you to everyone for coming, and thank you to my amazing panelists. As mentioned by Jo earlier, if you want to get involved in women in transport, you can go ahead and look at the website. But yeah, thank you all. There will be a feedback form coming round in the next couple of days, so I'd really appreciate your feedback on that. Yeah, have a lovely day.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Tia.
Bye, everyone.